All right, guys, here we are. New set of notes, right? So everybody make sure that you have your paper and pencil out ready to copy notes, right? So as always, the first thing we do is we identify the name of these notes. And these notes happen to be called triangles and congruence, right? Triangles and congruence, right? So we're gonna find out. Today we are can't talk, man. What we are learning today in geometry, two figures or objects are congruent if they have the same shape and size, right? So two figures or objects are congruent, right? Congruent if they have the same size and shape. So we have four triangles here. So this triangle is congruent with this triangle because they're the same size and they're the same shape, right? This one is just flipped around and kind of tilted to the right, right? This one is the same shape, but it's not the same size. So this is actually similar, right? This is similar to these two triangles, right? But we will talk about similarity later. Right now, these two, again, are congruent because they are the same size and they are the same shape. Now, this one here is not congruent because it's not the same size or shape. Well, it's the same size, kind of, right? But it's not the same shape, so it's not congruent. It's also not similar because it's not the same shape, right? It's not the same shape. So this one is nothing, right? Just another triangle, right? Now, there are two ways in which we can identify triangles as being congruent, right? It's by angles, right? Angles are on the inside of the triangle, right? Angles, right? And it's also by sides, right? This side is the same as that side, right? The one that by the 90 degree, right? This long side is congruent to this long side here. And finally, the bottom of this triangle is congruent to the bottom of that triangle, right? So those are called congruent. Corresponding is the word. Sides and angles. So let us see what this looks like in triangles, right? So the first set of instructions here that we see is, right, complete each congruent statement by naming the corresponding angle or side, right? Complete the congruence statement by naming the corresponding angle or side. So, as we can see here, triangles have 3 points, right? That's why they're named by 3 letters. Hence, this says triangle YXW. Triangle YXW. Right? Now this shape here, which is kind of unclear, so let me make it a little big like this. It's an equal sign with a little squiggly on top. That means congruent. Right? So this says triangle YXW. YXW is congruent to triangle EDC. Triangle EDC, right? They are congruent. So if they're congruent, the whole triangle, both the triangles, the whole thing themselves are congruent. That means that the parts are congruent as well. All right, so let's take a look. So as you can see here, there's a bunch of dashes, right? These are dashes, these are loops, right? What do these dashes mean? What do these loops mean? Right? So what they mean is congruence. This is the way in math that we identify congruent parts. So we are going to identify congruent parts here. So as you can see here, this triangle is first. YXW. YXW is first. So first let's deal with the angles. So this is angle Y. So I'm going to write angle Y is congruent to, well, now I got to look at this triangle, right? At this triangle right here. Which of these three corners corresponds to angle Y? Well, what I do is I look at my little arch here. How many arches are there? There's only one. So I'm going to look at my second triangle and I'm going to see which of these has one little arch, and it's E. So that means that angle Y is congruent to angle E. Look at that. Okay. So this was, let's go back to our first triangle. So we got the one with one arch. Let's do the corner with two arches. So this is angle X is congruent to angle, well, this is double arches. Where is the double arches here? D. Look at that. Angle D. Look at that. Right? So we got single arch, double arch. Now let's do triple arch. Angle W. Angle W is congruent to angle, well, three arches. Let's see here is C. Angle C. Those parts are congruent to each other. These are the parts that are congruent to each other. So if you notice, angle Y and angle E are congruent to each other. So that means that this triangle right here was kind of like turned around, right? Because angle Y is on the right side and here angle E is on the left side. So if you kind of like flip the E around and this triangle around and then like make it straight and put them on top of each other, then that means that E would be here and D would be here and C would be up here, right? So we got the angles part down. Now let's do the sides. Let's do the sides. So this is what we're going to do. A side is made up of two letters because check it out. Okay, for example, we have from X to Y. That's one side. Look, that makes that side of the triangle. We have from X to W. That makes this side of the triangle. And from W to Y, that makes that side of the triangle. So let's look for the side that has one slash, which is this one right here, right? So what two letters make this side right here? X, W. So we're going to say Y, excuse me, not XW. XY is congruent to, so which side on this triangle has a single slash? Right here, right? And that's from E to D. So it's congruent to E, D. Look at that. Perfect. Okay. Now let's go back to our first one. Let's look for a double. Right there, right? From X to W is a double. So we're going to say XW is congruent to, now let's look at our second triangle. Which one is double? Right here. C to D. CD. Look at that. Don't mind that. Those are my dogs. Kobe and Kira. Those are my two dogs. Finally, let's look at the triple dash, which is from W to Y, right? So WY, so we say WY is congruent to, which is the triple dash on this one, E to C or C to E. By the way, you can flip-flop the letters. You can say CE or you can say EC. I'm going to say, since this is W, so I went from 3 to 2, from 3 loops to 2 loops, I'm going to do the same thing here. From 3 loops to 2 loops, so CE. Look at that. And those are all our congruences. Those are all the individual parts that make these two triangles here congruent. They're the same shape and they are the same size. Same shape and same size, right? So when we're looking for angles, we do our little angle symbol. When we're looking for sides, we do the 2 letters with a line on top, right? All right. Let's take a look at the second one here. So this says, the instructions here says, mark the angles inside of each pair of triangles to indicate that they are congruent. So this one is blank. Look, no dashes, no loops. What we're going to do is we're going to add these dashes and loops to make it look like that, right? So let's add dashes and loops. So I'm going to go with blue here. So I'm going to start with the arches, right? The loops. So I called it loops, the little arches, the angles. So I'm going to start with this triangle here. IHG. IHG. So if you notice, first is I. So I'm going to make that my single arch. Second is H. So I'm going to make that my double arch. And third is G. I'm going to make that my triple arch. So same thing on the second one. DCB. Single arch, double arch, triple arch. Single arch, double arch, and triple arch. Look at that. So I've identified the congruent parts. Angle I is congruent to angle D, 1 arch. Angle H is congruent to angle C, double arch. And angle G is congruent to angle B, triple arch. So we got the arches. Now let's do the slashes. All right? Let's do orange. So I noticed that from I to H is the first pair. Look, they're right next to each other. I to H. So from I to H, I'm going to make my single. My second pair of letters, it's H to G. H to G. I'm going to make that my double. That makes this last side my triple. Look at that. Right? So I'm going to do the same thing on the second triangle. From D to C is my single. D to C is my single dash. From C to B is my double. And that means that my last side is my triple. And there you go. We have identified all the congruent sides and angles, right? We marked it up. Perfect. Look at that. We marked them all up. Finally, the last kind of problem you're going to see is one that's this one. That says, write a statement that indicates that the triangles in each pair are congruent. So they give us the slashes. What we have to do is we have to write down a statement. We have to make a statement to show how this triangle is congruent to this triangle. And the statement is going to look like that right there. right? So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first triangle, and I'm going to start with my single arch, my double arch, and my triple arch. So triangle GHI, right? So I'm going to say, or should I use purple? So I'm going to say triangle GHI is congruent to, okay, how do I name this triangle here? Well, remember, I started with single arch, went to double arch, then went to triple arch. GHI, there's my triangle. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Single arch, single arch to double arch to triple arch. So it's NIM. Triangle NIM. And that is my statement. Look at that. Now, if you notice, this I here, it shares. This I is shared by this triangle, and it's shared by this triangle. But on this triangle here, on this side, it's the triple arch. And on this triangle here, it is the double arch. Interesting, right? All right. There you go. Look at that. That's how we identify congruent parts of congruent triangles, right? And how to identify triangles that are congruent. Okay? So that looks pretty good. Make sure that you copied everything down. You wrote everything down. You're good to go. My voice just cracked. Did you guys notice that? I'm 43 years old and my voice is cracking. That's weird. Weird. Anyway. All right, guys. Thank you for being here. Make sure that you are good with this. Rewind if you have to make sure that you are good so you can work on your assignment.